Hey guys. Oh, let me bring this closer. Welcome to the live stream. My name's Josh. Cultivate Your Best Self is about seeking a deeper knowledge of yourself, who you aspire to become, and how and why you value time and money. Today we're going to be talking about this book that I read, this really great book called Psychology of Money. I'm going to be sharing some of the notes that I've taken, and I'll go through by kind of like by chapter, of what's written in the book. All the different like section headings in the book is shown on the side here. And the first thing that we're going to do is talk a little bit about the author, and then we'll get into the contents of the book. But I think this is a really important subject to cover, especially on my channel, where one of the things that I really kind of want to get people to understand is how and why you value time and money. It's like part of my main like slogan for this channel. And so I think this is a really like great topic to cover for the themes of this channel. So I can't wait to get into it. I'm gonna grab, I should have done this beforehand, but I'm gonna grab a quick cup of water. So go ahead and get a snack or a drink, and then we'll get started. I'm gonna go ahead and share. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna grab that drink first, and then I'll be right back. Okay. Actually, I've got my water right here. Oh, it feels kind of empty though. I'm gonna fill it. Be right back. All right. Lots of great stuff to cover today. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I almost want to wear my sunglasses to kind of take away from the sty that I have in my eye. Ugh, I still haven't. It's been a week now that I've had it. Well, a little less than a week, but it's kind of bugging me. So I'm gonna try and. I think I'll do this live session with some sunglasses on. Make me seem a little bit cooler. Ooh, and the green kind of matches my shirt too. Oh yeah. Hey Suzanne, welcome to the live stream. Okay, look, let me go ahead and share my screen. I think I'm already sharing it. I just need to change the camera setting. Yeah. Change that. And turn this off. Yeah, there we go. Oh, we won't be able to see like the other. Well, I think this might end up being 2 sessions, just because there's a lot to cover here. What? No, the sunglasses? No. Yeah, I think this might end up being 2 sessions, just because there's so much to cover, and I like to kind of go off on tangents when I'm speaking, especially if like a story reminds me of something personal, and then I usually like to share those things. But let's get into the author here. Morgan Housel is a New York Times best-selling author of this book, The Psychology of Money, and Same as Ever. I haven't read Same as Ever, but I am curious about it. His books have sold over 6 million copies and have been translated into more than 50 languages. And then I kind of copied this snippet from Google Books, and I really like this description. Doing well with money isn't necessarily about what you know, it's about how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach even to really smart people. People in the real world don't use spreadsheets to make important financial decisions at the dinner table or in the conference room. People mix in their own backgrounds, perspectives, egos, prides, marketing strategies, and peculiar motivations to come up with these decisions. And to help you better understand one of life's most important themes, award-winning author Morgan Housel presents 19 short stories in his book, The Psychology of Money. Now, I'm not going to go over, every story. I will cover, a few of them, but I want to save those for you guys in case you want to read the book. I think it's a really great read, and it's a really quick read too. Like, once you start getting into it, like it's fascinating, like understanding how people treat money and why they treat money the way that they do. So the first section that we're going to talk about is no one's crazy. Now, that might sound crazy in itself because I feel like I know some crazy people. But this is with in regard to with how people treat money. Like you can't really judge someone for the way that they treat money because they may have had a completely different upbringing compared to what you've experienced, and that difference in experiences can really shape how someone sees money, values money, how they value it. And let's get into some of the bullet points here. Being smart doesn't matter as much as your behavior. I'm gonna pull up my notes here really quick. You guys can't see it. You guys just see the presentation, but this is just to kind of give me a little bit more background on some of these bullet points. So there's a quote here that I kind of wrote down is doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And behavior is, that's kind of what he says in the beginning, or what I say in the beginning from the description of the book. The next bullet point here is psychology of money is a skill. And it's something that can be developed. And one of the things that Morgan Housel really kind of pushes is that, hey, get out of there. Get out of there. My dog's trying to get some leftover KFC that's in the bones that are in the trash in the kitchen. So this understanding of the psychology of money is really a skill that you can learn. It takes time, and it really kind of takes into account more how you behave with money rather than other things. It drives financial success much more than people expect. Money is everywhere, affects us all, and confuses most people. I think that's pretty true. Like when I first started this YouTube channel, I really kind of focused in on financial literacy because some of the research and the findings that are out there kind of really paint this picture of society not really understanding the complexities of how money is handled. Like a lot of people don't understand debt. A lot of people don't understand interest rates that are controlled by the Fed. People don't understand like basics in the stock market, like stocks, bonds, derivatives. Things that begin to get more complex, and there's just so many different types of topics that people need to be educated on so that they can really take full advantage of a system that's really designed to extract your money, right? This is really a consumer culture, and consumer culture is really designed to get you to spend as much money as possible to drive profits and economies, and doesn't really play into the fact that buying a lot of material goods is not going to bring you happiness, but the level of comfort and stability and security that having a lot of money brings you is eludes a lot of people because they don't understand that they don't understand the psychology behind why they spend the way that they spend. They don't understand the importance of saving, or may even feel like they can't save, right? And there's just a lot that plays into it, and that's one of the reasons why I started off this channel focusing in on financial literacy. But as I kind of was going on my own personal growth journey, it really evolved into still keeping in on the importance of money management, but also on like self management. And that also deals with behavior, right? It deals with emotion, attitude, and like your thoughts and your behaviors. And all of that kind of really plays into how you handle money, right? Like, um, not that long ago, I would say like year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was in a pretty significant amount of debt. And I had to get a consolidating loan. When I was in my 20s, I was pretty irresponsible once I started making money because I kind of had this feeling like, if I bought more stuff, if I had like higher quality stuff, that it would bring me happiness. And really, all that did is get me into a lot of debt when I was in my 30s because I felt like I could keep up with my credit cards. The credit cards that I opened, like, oh, it's gonna be no problem. Like, I'm just gonna pay it off. But then like interest rates kind of play into it, and like those kind of creep up, and it becomes this like snowball effect that gets really hard to control. And I had to become much more aware of my spending habits, my expenses, keeping track of my expenses, and really understanding that my emotions and my behavior play a lot more of a role than I expected in how I see money. And so I'm glad to say now, like, the amount of debt that I'm in has significantly decreased, and that's because I had to have help, right? I reached out to family, my wife, my mom, and they kind of helped me get into a consolidating loan and pay off a bunch of my credit card debt. And that consolidating loan is basically all I have left. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a car payment. But I still have the remnants of what's left over from that credit card debt. But the interest rates on that is much lower than the the credit cards that I had. It would have taken me probably 10 plus years to pay that off, and now I'm maybe like a year away from paying everything off, if not closer or sooner. But but yeah, money is everywhere. It affects us all and confuses most of us. Studying events from the past. So what he says about this is studying events from the past or from a perspective other than your own kind of makes us feel like we understand its consequences. And so that's like reading a story of like the 100 stupidest ways to die. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen anything like that. I'm sure my my wife has looked into stuff like that. But when you see the consequences of some of these things that people do, it makes you think like, oh wow, like that's so silly. Like I would never do something like that. And what he's trying to say is, until you lived through and personally felt those consequences, then you may not completely understand what you need to in order to change your own behavior if that circumstance was to arise in your reality. And I think that's very true, right? Like a lot of us kind of know what we need to do in order to have more money, right? We need to save, we need to not spend so much. Like I'm sure if you were to look at your monthly expenses, there could be ways to cut back $100 or $200, if not more, from what you currently spend on. But because we feel like those things bring us a certain amount of joy in our lives, or like, I don't know, say it's like sweets, right? Like say you're spending like 50, $60 on like certain amount of sweets throughout the month, or eating out, instead of cooking. There are these trade-offs where we feel like it brings more value to our lives in terms of experiences and emotions and those types of things, where we understand, right? We understand that if we were to kind of like switch our ways, change our behaviors, then we could get to a point where we had much more money in the bank or invested or in a savings account than we would have if we continue to spend the way we spend. And so just because you hear these stories of how people make money, or you hear these stories of how people lose it all, doesn't necessarily mean that you understand those consequences. Sometimes you have to like live through it to really grasp the understanding, and to really like have it change your behavior. And when I was reading this, actually, this kind of made me think of something. When I remember when I was reading this, a lot of this personal growth journey that I'm on, a lot of the people that I follow that have found success, a lot of them have stories that kind of start out the same. It's, I had this near death experience, and it opened my eyes to the fact that I needed to change my behavior. I needed to change what I was doing. Like I needed to do more. And it's discouraging to me that people have to get to a point where they're basically near death to realize that changing their behaviors is kind of like the right thing to do. Like it's something that we know we have to do. Like let's say your health, for example, right? Like that's one of the biggest things. Like people like put off being healthy, exercising, having the proper nutrition in their diets. People put this off like for as long as they possibly can, until the point where like they have heart attacks, or they have strokes, or they collapse because they haven't had enough water. Whatever it is, like I don't understand. Like I don't understand. I personally don't understand why people do this, right? Like why it needs to come to a point where they have to feel these consequences in order to change. And if anyone could give any insight into that, that would be like really great. But right, it plays into the psychology of what people are thinking in their own heads. Some people think like, this life is really short, so I'm gonna eat all the junk food that I possibly can, and I don't care if my life's short. I'm gonna live life to the fullest, and do whatever I want. And it's just like, okay, you're gonna live a much shorter life than you otherwise could if you just gave up some of the things that bring you satisfaction. But to each their own, right? How did I get into this? Oh, studying events from the past. Yeah. Yeah. One of the quotes from the book is, some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. Let's get into some of these stories. So there was a story about an ant that I particularly remember, and it was, I want to say the interview was with like one of her nephews, yeah, I think it was with one of her nephews or something, and they were talking about how, comparing the job that she had, and how she was completely happy in that job, but like almost anybody else in the same circumstances would have hated to have her job. And so the story kind of goes like this. The aunt worked in a sweatshop, and she was incredibly happy to be working in the sweatshop. But she was being exploited by her evil capitalist boss, and kind of taken advantage of. And despite that, like if you talk to her, she was like the happiest person in the world. And it was hard for some people to understand, like, how can you be so happy in a situation where like you're working in like really terrible conditions, right? Like there's no air conditioning. You're being yelled at by your boss. You're being overworked, underpaid. All these things. And what the aunt came back to say was, this compared to the job that I had before is like leaps and bounds greater than where I was before this. And then it made people think like, what kind of job could she possibly have had to feel like, to see how happy she is in this sweatshop job. Anybody else would be miserable working the sweatshop job. Well, it turns out the job that she had prior to that sweatshop job was she was a prostitute, right? And she was making a lot less money than she was in the sweatshop, and she was being exploited by like several men every single day. And like the toll that had on her inner psychology, right? Like imagine being exploited in that way. Like you're giving up like your body to please like other men. And yeah, it was over time it just like wore her down, and she was like pretty devastated with how her life had turned out. It's not something that she expected. But then this opportunity came up for her to have that the sweatshop job, and she took it. And her life, she said, was no amount of like yelling from her boss, and no amount of like being overworked and underpaid compared to like obviously jobs that were better than that, but she was getting more money working that job than she was doing in prostitution. And so you have to really understand those different perspectives to understand why someone might think about money or their situations the way that they do, right? Like it's hard to understand unless you're in their shoes. And that's the story of the ant. The bullet point that I have here says an example of how different experiences can lead to vastly different views within topics that one side intuitively thinks should be black and white. And that's kind of like looking at something without really understanding the external factors that surround that particular thing. I don't know if that makes sense. Like like if you were to see her job, like her sweatshop job, like just from that one perspective, like, oh, she has a job where she's overworked, underpaid, she's yelled at by her boss. Like, yeah, you might think like, okay, she doesn't have it very good. She like anybody else would think like that sucks so bad. But with her perspective, like she loved it. She was happier than she had ever been in her life. And yeah, it just takes that perspective, right? Lottery tickets. This is actually this is something that I kind of harp on my mom about, because she loves those scratchers, the ones that you like scratch off to try and play and win for lots of money. And this was interesting to read about because I never quite understood why people spend so much money on these things. And Morgan Housel in this book kind of opened up my mind as to why people are so fascinated with lottery tickets and scratchers. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but Americans spend more on lottery tickets and scratchers than movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. Now think about how crazy that is. Think about the billions of dollars, or billions? I would say probably billions, right? Billions of dollars spent on movies. Video games is a $1 billion industry. Sporting events, right? Football games, like the Super Bowl is incredibly expensive to go to. Suzanne says, I knew you were going to bring that up. Stop some. But yeah, so Americans spend more on lottery tickets and scratchers than movies, video games. It's just almost unfathomable to think about how much is being spent on them. And this is the reason that Morgan Housel in the book gives to why that is the case. It's because buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives that we can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have and take for granted. We're paying for it. People pay for a dream, and you may not understand that because you are already living the dream. And while that's not necessarily like my perspective on it, I can understand the idea of that, when you have that lottery ticket before they've called the numbers, or you have the scratcher before you've scratched everything off, like you're literally holding the potential of your dreams to come true, right? Like everything you could ever possibly imagine that you want with money is there in your hand, right? Like it's a physical, tangible item that you can hold that represents like almost the solving of all of your problems. And while that, solving all your problems is not obviously the case, having more money can bring up other issues. It's just the idea of having like the potential for your dreams to be in your hand at that very moment. That's why people pay for that. It's the potential for their dreams to come true, or what they believe to be their dreams to come true. That was just kind of like really eye opening for me, right? Like, I mean, I personally wouldn't mind like winning the lottery, right? Like, I feel like I would be a lot smarter with the winnings than some other people, right? Like, people who come into a lot of money tend to kind of blow it all pretty quickly. It reminds me of something that I heard on, I think it was TikTok the other day, where people don't really want millions of dollars, right? Like, or people don't really want to make millions of dollars. People really want to spend millions of dollars. And there's a really big difference between those two, right? Like one of those is like a consumer, right, who just wants to like spend, and the other is more likely a producer, right? Someone who wants to like give back and help people and generate the money so that they have the security that they're looking for, or to have the freedom with their time that they're looking for. That money can afford you to do that. But yeah, retirement. It wasn't, and this is something new that I had learned, but retirement is actually maybe about 40 years old. It wasn't until the 1980s that the idea that everyone deserves to retire kind of took hold. And that's, before then, like people would basically just work until, oh, that's my wife in the background. And my son. You guys are going for a walk?
Yeah.
Need help?
Yeah.
I'll be right back, you guys. I'm just gonna walk our dog down the stairs. Alright, I'm back. She usually just unleashes our dog so that she can run up the stairs. But she usually needs help walking her down. Okay. Gonna have some water. Let's see, where was I? Oh, retirement. So retirement is a fairly like relatively new thing, right? Like people were kind of expected prior to that to work until they died, and I think now, unless you, let me catch my breath. I promise I'm in shape. I just ran up the stairs. It's 3 flights. Okay, I think I'm good. If you were to ask anyone today, probably I would say millennial and younger, you would almost expect to hear like, I wish I could retire now. and while that's the case today, like 40 years ago, people were just getting used to the idea of retiring, right? Like it was a foreign concept before then, right? Like people were expected to kind of work until were too old to not work. And my own expectations of that, is like, uh, starting this kind of like life strategy, accountability coaching business, you know, even if I were to build this to a multi-million dollar business, like I would still, you know, this is something that I would still do out of, having a passion for it, right? Having a passion for helping people overcome their own emotions, their own psychology, their own behaviors, right? To help them achieve their own dreams. It's something that I'm dedicated to doing. And so I could easily see myself, working until I basically can't anymore, regardless of how much money I'm making. And that's usually not the case with people who are working jobs that they hate, right? Like if you work a job that you hate long enough, then you eventually get to a point where like, I'm just good not working. And to me, like that, it almost sounds like, I'm good not contributing to society anymore. And like, well, that's my own perspective of it, but people in that situation, they're like, I've given enough of my contributions to society where I feel like I could just enjoy my time. And like I get that, right? um and that's fine. Like I that I'm not like putting them down, like putting those types of people down or anything. Like they've earned it. But to say that when you're in your 20s or 30s is like, I don't know, kind of weird to me. And it just depends on like your perspective of it, right? Like everyone can have their own opinions on what they feel is like, I don't know, like having worked hard enough in your life to deserve um, to deserve an amount of money that is commensurate with how much you've contributed to society, and then to be able to retire that much earlier. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so ever since the 80s, it's kind of been the expectation that everyone is going to save and invest their own money to be able to earn that retirement. And Morgan's kind of take on this is that because the idea of retirement is only in its like 40th year, that it's still really difficult for people to kind of grasp the idea of saving and investing for their future retirement. And so because it's still like this, like in the financial world, 40 years is not a long period to kind of get used to something, especially with how much technology has kind of exploded. And so this idea of needing to save and invest, or like finding ways for your money to grow so that in the future you have enough money to say, okay, I don't need to work anymore. My money's worked enough for me to have enough to sustain me for the rest of my life. Like that idea is still like kind of in its early stages. So it's no wonder that we can't really expect people to be able to do that on their own, right? Like a lot of the human race, or people that are of working age are need to get educated on this idea that okay, you need to do these responsible things with money so that if you want to retire, you can do so comfortably. And it's going to take more time for us to learn that. Emotion versus fact. Did I get the right section here? Where did I get emotion versus fact? I don't see that in my notes. It should surprise no one. Oh, I see. So, um, when it comes to money, money is a topic that is highly influenced by emotion versus like the facts, like what you know you need to do with it. And I feel like I've kind of covered this, that emotions really play heavily into how we spend our money. But that fact that emotions play into it is a problem, and it does help explain, at least in part, why we don't do the things we're supposed to do with money. Well, let's get on to what time is it? It's 6:40 already. Oh man, luck and risk. So what does he mean by luck and risk? I think luck and risk are two sides to the same coin. Luck being more so the positive things that happen from something that's kind of out of your control, and risk being like if you experience luck, it's the positive side of an experience, and then risk, if you experience something that's like the negative parts of something that is risky, is more like the other side of the coin. That's kind of like the negative experiences. And so what he says is luck and risk are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. So like what you put into something is is not the whole picture, right? Like um, there are other outside influences that occur while you're putting the effort into something that can have a huge impact on what you experience, right? Take entrepreneurship for example. That's a very like I think a very clear cut example of someone putting their effort into kind of building a business from the ground up. Uh, if I were to say like my own, if I use myself as an example, if I were to say go into a restaurant where I'm talking to a friend of mine about this business idea, and then like a capitalist investor just happens to be like one booth over, hearing me pitch my idea, and just us happening to be there at the same time, that's like a huge like luck factor, right? Like, and say he approaches me and says like, "Hey, I want to invest and see you succeed. Let's get this business off the ground." Like there's no way that I could have done anything to put myself intentionally in that situation. It's just luck. Luck plays a factor whether we like both luck and risk play a factor whether we like to think of that or not, right? Um, Morgan says that the accidental impact of actions outside of your control can be more consequential than the ones you consciously take. And right, like had I not been in that restaurant or sitting in that booth with the capitalist investor directly behind me, like it could have been it could have been possible that my business like never succeeded or never went off the ground. And so things like that like can have a much greater impact than we realize. And so because of that, I think we need to understand that not all success is due to hard work. Not all poverty is due to laziness. I think those two things can be difficult to come to terms with, right? Like, um, a lot of the times when you see stories on the news of people saying like, "Oh, I turned my side hobby into a $50 million business," and most people kind of write that off as like, "Oh, he was just very lucky," or "He came from money," or like whatever excuse that you might give to make yourself feel better about the the fortunate events that person has come onto. like the fortunate circumstances of their hobby turning into a $50 million business. It's to make yourself feel better. You just say, oh, they got lucky, or oh, they come from money. And that might not necessarily be the case. In fact, like I remember hearing the statistic that the majority of millionaires don't come from money, right? They work their butts off from either like a middle income family or lower income family, and end up finding success through like hard work and consistency, and having a growth mindset, and just like performing behaviors that put them in situations that gave them more opportunities to find that success. And it's just, yeah, coming to terms with the idea that sometimes not all success is due to hard work. Sometimes people do get lucky, but I don't think that's the majority of cases. I think it's more than likely that people worked really hard. But then there's those people that win the $1 billion lotteries, right? Like that's incredibly lucky. And then not all poverty is due to laziness. Like there are certain circumstances that people are exposed to that just give people these unfortunate circumstances in their lives that make them poor. And sometimes it's not due to anything from their own their own doing. It's like outside factors. The more extreme the outcome, the less likely you can apply its lessons to your own life. So I think this is like talking about like stories where people who like win the lottery, people who like discover something. What's another example I can give? Someone who invents something like completely new that people happen to need, or like people can actually, like, it can make people's lives easier, right? Like things like that, like, and then it creates like a multimillionaire from the person that invented it. These like kind of extreme examples that make it less likely that you can apply the lessons that they learned to your own life is what does he say here? Because the more likely the outcome was influenced by extreme ends of luck or risk. Oh, so in cases like that, those are more influenced by the effects of luck or risk, and it's hard to apply those things to your own life because there's like very low chance that you're in a situation where you have that same luck. And you know what, this reminds me of this reminds me a lot of people that I see on YouTube today sharing their kind of like step-by-step process for how they made $1 million selling stickers on Etsy, right? Like they end up making more money from the amount of people that want to watch that video to just have a chance to make a significant amount of money doing the exact same thing. But the problem is that this person who actually made the $1 million, one, probably had circumstances that aligned to this perfect set of circumstances that allowed them to take advantage of making that $1 million. And then now what they're doing is playing on people's emotion, playing on people's desire to want to make a lot of money in order to get a lot of views on YouTube. And now they're making money off people, basically like taking advantage of people and getting those views, and then making money from the AdSense on from advertisements on YouTube, and any sponsorships as they end up getting sponsorships, stuff like that. and then they become wealthy, like, making more money from YouTube. And it's just, I don't know, it's crazy to me how people, I don't know if people are genuine in thinking that, if they share their step-by-step process, that other people will be able to make as much money as they did. I think it's kind of, I don't know, like, morally questionable, because the circumstances that gave that person their $1 million is more than likely not going to be the same set of circumstances that will make anybody else even close to that amount of money. And it's just, I don't know, kind of my view on things. But it's a lot, there's a lot of content out there, that people share their step-by-step process for things, and you know what, they've already made the money that's, to be made in that situation. And it's just, I don't know, just, I feel like it's kind of taking advantage of people. But that's kind of my perspective on it. People who have control over their time tend to be happier in life, and that's a broad and common enough observation that you can do something with it, right? Like, um, I it's tough because there. I think unless you've had a taste of unless you've had a taste of having a lot of money and really understanding like how much your time can be freed by just having money, right? Like not having to worry, like getting into a position where you don't have to worry about money anymore, right? Like say you have $50 million in the bank. um I don't think you'd ever have to worry about money in your life unless you're someone who will blow it all within 5 years, 10 years, and people do that, right? People in Wall Street do this all the time. They're spending millions and millions of dollars on drugs, on yachts, on travel, on multiple mansions, right? Like, um, they just, and this will play into the next bullet point, um, but yeah, like, uh, that's a completely different case actually. But like, uh, having enough money can really like free up your time, and that, I think that's really the ultimate goal that everyone should have in mind, is like not necessarily chasing money for the sake of having more of it, but like having enough of it to be able to like basically do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want. And then the last thing I have here on luck and risk is the trick when dealing with failure is arranging your financial life in a way that a bad investment here and a missed financial goal there won't wipe you out, so you can keep playing until the odds fall into your favor. Let's move on to, this is going to be the last bullet point that I cover, but never enough. Many of us have, let's see, what we have that some of the wealthiest people in the world will never have, and that's enough. um, there are people out there that will do anything, do whatever it takes to just continue making more money. And that's really kind of like, they may tell you otherwise, but it's just kind of a, I don't know if sad is the word, a sad life to live. Like, sure, I'm sure that they're doing things that bring them satisfaction, but when what does that matter if like what they're doing is like hurting other people or stealing from other people, or like breaking all kinds of laws in order to get that type of money. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, if that's something that you place like merit and value on, like, I don't know, it's just they'll never have enough. in that case, that they'll always have that like insatiable greed, that kind of drives them to always want more, to always need more. There seems to be no limit today on what enough entails, and I think I did I want to say a YouTube short on this, in a TikTok, but yeah, like no one ever talks about what's enough, right? Like even some of the entrepreneurs that I follow, like they're continuously trying to expand and grow their business, even though like their net worth is probably already at like, I don't know, like 10 million, and it seems like all they can ever think about is like, okay, what are ways that I can continue to grow this business? What are ways that I can continue to um, you know put my time into more things so that this makes me more money? And it there should be a point where, once you make a certain amount of money, like there's no need for me to continue growing anything, right? Like the point of business is not necessarily to continue searching to increase profits, right? And that seems to be like really like a huge driver for business, right? For business in general, businesses in the stock market, like it's all profit driven. And when a business becomes about when a business focuses only on ways to make more money, eventually the consumer or the customer is going to um, suffer at the expense of that business, right? Like the business will compromise. Like say it's like a business that creates like, I don't know, like a brand of cereal, or um, like something related to food, right? Like businesses, in order to cut costs, will lower the quality of their ingredients, or they'll put things into it that are like more dangerous than when they started, right? And I, I've seen this, and it sucks because like a lot of businesses start out with trying to solve a need, like a real need in the marketplace that benefits people, benefits customers, and when it becomes all about increasing the amount of profits that they make every single year, then eventually they get to a point where it's just their quality and like how much they care about the customer just kind of like falls away. And I'm like, I don't know, like I'm sure I'm sure you guys would agree with this, but I won't talk anymore about it. But um I've had this conversation with my wife, right? Like if I were to build a business that made us, we have our own goalpost, right? And he actually talks about this, but like the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. And my wife and I have kind of set our goalpost, and if I get to that point, there's no need for me to try and figure out ways to continue growing. Like I can just keep things as is, and be completely happy with where we are in life, right? Like we've established what enough is for us, and there's really no need for us to continue making more because we don't need it, right? Like any additional money that we would make beyond the goalpost that we set will either go to charity, or we'll go to like helping family, friends, whatever we choose. But we don't want to become that greedy, right? Like I personally am of the belief that this world should not have billionaires, regardless of how much value that they provide to society. Being a billionaire like is an unfathomable amount of money for most people in the world, and there's no reason why they should have it, right? Like there's um the amount of problems that their money can solve far outweighs them keeping that amount of money. And it's just that then at that point it becomes it becomes like selfish and greed. And so I don't know. That's kind of my viewpoint on it. But yeah, my wife and I have talked about what's enough for us, and there's really no reason for us to kind of move to make more beyond that. And the reason why Morgan talks about this is because it gets dangerous when the taste of having more money, more power, more prestige increases ambition faster than satisfaction. Right? When the amount that you want increases quicker than you're able to make and that you're able to be satisfied with, then that's when enough is never enough, and then people become miserable chasing just making more money, making more profits. So I think I'm gonna end it there. There's still a little bit more on enough that I want to talk about in the next session, but yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, on stuff that I've talked about today, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.